Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is Genvièv, and you are on Genvièv TV, your channel for forensic and clinical education. And today I come to you a bit out of the box with a topic that I believe is very important to get to know because it is a topic that's not well known yet. And I'm talking about today a covert, insidious, and pervasive form of abuse that is known as coercive control, strategically designed to leave little evidence in order to deceive and maintain control. Targets progressively become micromanaged by their abuser. Like childhood abuse, coercive control is very deeply damaging, as most covert forms of abuse truly are. The pressure and the cumulative weight that is persistent and pervasive with controlling and abusive behaviors lead to severe loss of self, the sense of self, self-worth, purpose, autonomy, and eventually deeply ingrained feelings of powerlessness, disconnection, severe depression, and PTSD, or even complex PTSD known as C-PTSD, when the abuse is ongoing for long periods of time. Coercive control creates chains that are invisible and a sense of fear that pervades all elements of the target's life. It works in limiting your human rights, depriving you of your freedom, your liberty, and reducing your ability for action. Experts like Evan Stark compare coercive control to the situation of being taken hostage. In his words, he explains the victim becomes captive of an unreal reality created by the abuser and trapped in a world of confusion, contradiction, and fear. We've all seen a very flagrant example of that in the movie Sleeping with the Enemy in 1991, a psychological thriller with Julia Roberts and Patrick Bergen. In Sleeping with the Enemy, we have a perpetrator who has clearly antisocial personality disorder, comorbid with another disorder. In his case, it's OCPD, which is completely different from the behavior known as OCD. And we see the comorbidity of different personality disorders in his brilliant depiction in that movie of that controlling behavior that usually will start, of course, with love bombing and romantic, over-the-top courtship with people who portray themselves as being adoring and loving and very present always in their target's life, and over the top with their romantic adoration of their target, which gets you to be just trapped into that whirlwind romance ideation. And little by little, that's where the pervasive controlling behavior starts. It's very insidious, it's very progressive, and at the beginning, trapped in your world of illusion of that grandiose love story, which everybody truly hopes for and longs for. It's the basic permanence of the human species, is to bond. And so very progressively, we see in the case of coercive control that increasing manipulation, abuse, and controlling behavior taking place. So England became, in 2015, along with Wales, they became the first nations in the world to criminalize coercive control, making it punishable by up to 5 years in jail. And they've taken action very strongly with that, imprisoning people that were judged as being predators and guilty of coercive control. And Ireland and Scotland followed next. In the US, even though the Obama administration had taken steps to follow suit in that endeavor, the steps were actually reversed and canceled by the current administration. According to the studies that were conducted by the police force in the UK, Women make up to 95% of those targeted by coercive control, and 74% of perpetrators are men. So today we're going to go over 10 ways to spot coercive control so you can identify if this is happening to you and take rapid action, because it's important. And like always with my channel here, the goal is to educate ourselves in order to recognize and take the appropriate measures to keep ourselves safe. So 10 ways to spot coercive control. The first one is monitoring. So typically you observe a gradual, progressive, and increasing monitoring of your activities and an attempt by the perpetrator of taking control over aspects of your life. It starts with your actions or interactions with others, your communications, the messages you send. So you'll notice coercive control happening very, very subreptiously, subtly at the beginning, and somebody leaning over your shoulder, looking at what you're doing, and starting to comment on who you're supposed to communicate with and who you're not allowed to communicate with. Your actions and interactions with others, your communications become increasingly controlled, monitored, and dictated. Gradual control over who you are able to see comes next. Of course, how you spend your time, where you can go, what you can wear, and even when you're allowed to sleep. All are forms of coercive control. Then there is a record keeping, monitoring your activities, sometimes online with tools like spyware. The second sign is restricting your daily activities, whether it's your daily habits or meeting and interacting with your friends, your family. When you see signs of somebody attempting to isolate you from your circles, from your friends, from your family, if you feel increasingly unable to carry out your normal routine life habits, there is definitely here a signal for concern. Third sign is unreasonable demands followed up by pressure to obey to those demands. And if you're not complying, they will be followed by threats, retaliation, or even physical restraint. Then comes degradation, humiliation, dehumanization, malicious debasing, belittling, mockery, bullying your behavior, criticizing your performance in past interactions, past actions, endeavors, repeated and increasing, designed to truly break your sense of self-worth, your internal image, making you feel worthless. Then we have it progress with the attempt to take your communication abilities away, your access to phone, internet, information, and services, capturing your confidential passwords. You'll see that with somebody leaning over as you're entering a password and memorizing that. Your entry to your iPads, laptops, communication devices come first, and then the changing and restricting of your access to communication, information, and services. It progresses very often to restricted mobility, limiting your ability to leave the house when you live with the perpetrator or use your car. Attempt to separate, once again, and isolate you from your circles, your friends, and your family. Then it progresses to economic and financial control, monitoring your spending, telling you what you're allowed to spend or not to spend, or giving you a specific allowance to live on, increasing control over your autonomy, your finances, your freedom of action. It can progress as far as depriving you of food, of sleep, of basic necessities, basic human needs, limiting your access to support services, medical services, all of which are controlling and abusive behaviors. And then we have, of course, intimidation, bullying, and threats. If your behavior is not to their liking, to the perpetrator's choices, you're then threatened, intimidated into changing it. And this can also include sexual demands as well, if you are living with a perpetrator in a couple, which is the most common form of coercive control. And then destruction of your possessions, of your valuables, of your records, emails, or messages, or threat of destroying your belongings, emails, messages, or records. So all of those are definite clear signs of coercive control. If you or anyone you know is facing this type of abuse, do reach out to your local support agencies. In the US, we have the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. These are important signs to take into account because coercive control is pervasive and it increases over time. And the longer you stay, the more damage you will sustain in your ability to recover and your freedom and self-esteem. So I work with victims of abuse. I work with trauma very intensively in rebuilding your sense of self after abuse and sometimes during abuse, as the target is beginning to realize there is a very serious issue and attempting to reach out. We can have immediate and strong effect using brain plasticity, brain rewiring to help educate you and rebuild your strength. So as you know, everyone, my name is Genvièv Sinclair. I'm a board-certified forensic and clinical hypnosis instructor. I work with brain plasticity and brain rewiring. I have decades of experiences working with complex cases previously resistant to treatment. I'm also an emergency medicine first responder with the Wilderness Medicine Institute. And of course, I work in collaboration with your medical team to help you regain your strength, to help you regain your sense of self, your sense of worth, educate yourself, and find ways to reignite your life, rise from your ashes, from the destruction and the obliteration that we sustain under abuse, traumatic events, and adversity. Find your truth, recreate your reality in a way that fits your authenticity and your goals, and help you identify that there is indeed hope and there is indeed a life after abuse, and I'm here to help you. So feel free to connect directly with me. You'll find my contact information under the video when you are on youtube.com/GenvièvTV. That is your channel for education, forensic and clinical education, rebirth, and strengthening yourself, because we're stronger together than we could ever be alone. Do subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again in our next episode. Until then, have a wonderful week, everybody. Ciao, ciao.